This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and this is Success Mentorship, class number 210. And our topic today is using your higher powers. I want to thank you and welcome each and every one of you today on Instagram and on Facebook. And also I want to welcome all of the Success Mentorship Network members who are present on Zoom on our live broadcast. Remind everybody that our topics and our classes are based on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success. And it's available on all of your digital websites, the store of your choice, Amazon, Walmart, all of the bookstores, it's available. Also want to announce our home study course now, where you can take many of the principles that we cover in our classes and in our seminars and use them at your pace in the New You for the New Year home study course. And that's available at herbertharris.com. So this morning, let us start with our meditation so that we can put ourselves in the proper space to be open and receptive to the message. Let's sit straight up in our seats, close our outer eyes, take a deep breath, hold it, let it out slowly. Take a deep breath, hold it, let it out slowly. And in this state of peace and relaxation, we are at peace with ourselves. I am at peace with myself. Let us say that together. I am at peace with myself. Let that peace just sink in, and once more, I am at peace with myself. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. And in this state of peace and relaxation, our minds are open, receptive, and ready to learn. Let us affirm together. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Let that sink in. Once more. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Wow. Thank you so much for being with us. Today we have a topic that I really love, and it's called using your higher powers. And I wanted us to really begin to focus on that because our higher powers are powers that are available to us to help us move through this thing called life. And when we talk about higher powers, we have to get an understanding of what that really means. Let me give a couple of quotes that let you know that this higher power has been and has a powerful and profound impact on many people's lives. Kenny Loggins said, "My trust in a higher power that wants me to survive and have love in my life is what keeps me moving forward." My trust in a higher power that wants me to survive and have love in my life, that keeps me moving forward. Wow. There's another beautiful quote I love, and it says, "Today I call upon my higher power to deliver me from the impossible to the possible, from darkness to light, from fear to courage." So this idea of higher power is something very, very profound in the sense that it really, many of us who have cars, there was a time when you could take your car and open the hood and take a wrench and a pair of pliers and a screwdriver, and you could fix stuff yourself. But you notice now that you don't do that anymore. When you open the hood of your car, you look and you have not a clue what's going on. And so what happens now is that you have to go to a higher power. You have to take your car to the dealer and they plug it into the computer, and the computer tells you what's going on. And so based on that analogy in our lives, and right now we are living in some very, very interesting times, we must have the tools to help us move forward no matter what. And so when we think about higher power, most of us hear this term when people are dealing with like some of the 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous, those type programs designed to help people find themselves and bring them from wherever they are to another place that's better. And in that process, there's an acknowledgement that there is something outside of ourselves. There's something bigger than ourselves. And that once we recognize that thing, that it's outside and bigger than ourselves, then it's all about alignment. That once you recognize that there's a pattern, that there's an outside force that's bigger than you, then the essence of life is really, how do I get aligned with that thing? It's also recognition that there's something outside controlling us, that we didn't just happen to get here, that there's a reason for us being alive. There's a purpose to our lives. And so when we think about this higher power, one of the things that often jumps out for me is so often we call upon the higher power when we are in, you might say, a tough situation. We've been there. And it's very interesting. I always wonder, when you have people who are atheists, and I'm not knocking atheists, but I often wonder when they get into those moments, and those moments I'm talking about, where it seems that everything has gone wrong, and when everything has come down on you and then you're suffering and in pain, who do you call on? Very interesting. Because it's in those moments when we're really under, you might say, terrific stress, that we call upon something outside of ourselves. It's in those moments that we really recognize that we don't have all that we need right here, that there's something greater than we are, and that we're a part of that greatness. So consider this, that life is like a great symphony. A symphony where everybody, everything, every entity, every person, every animal, every rock has a part in that symphony. And so the symphony of life moves along. And what we do as individuals, as people, when we are born into a symphony that was being played before we arrived, and that will be played after we make our transition. And so the essence of life then becomes, how do I align myself with this symphony? How do I take my seat in the symphony of life? And how do I play in tune, in time, on time? And so on a bigger picture, our goal in life then is to find our place in that symphony, to find where we fit in. And that journey is really the journey to our purpose. We would not be created to be a part of that great symphony if there was not a reason for our creation. And so the essence of life is, how do we get in? How do we fit into the symphony of life so that we can be happy, so that we can be full of joy? And how we fit in is determined by four things primarily: our thoughts, our emotions, our habits, and our relationships. And so then alignment, instead of seeking success, is like, how do I align myself now with the universal vibration so that I can live a good life? You see, there's that passage that says, don't worry about the lilies of the field. They don't paint, they don't grow, but yet they are adorned in great magnificence that even Solomon would be impressed. And so as we live our lives and we go through the things that we go through, it is very helpful to recognize that there are greater powers out there that can help us fit in and live a happy, productive life. Albert Einstein once said, you can't solve a problem at the same level that created it. And so those of us who are on the journey, on the path, we get to a certain point where we may come upon a wall or a hill or an obstacle of some sort. And it is when we have these challenges in life that we call upon those higher powers. And, in the Alcoholics Anonymous, in the 12-step programs, a part of the process is to recognize that it says, I am powerless. Clearly, I am powerless because where I'm at right now is definitely not where I wanted to be. And I surrender myself to this higher power. And I figure out how to align myself with the higher power to change my condition. So let's look at this idea of how do we connect with these higher powers that then enhance everything that we're doing. There's a section in the 12 Universal Laws of Success called Harmonic Relationships. And this really is, how do you begin to fit in to the universal symphony in a way that helps you live a productive, happy life? And the harmonic relationships give you this ability to interact in a fashion with the universe so that everything goes well for you, so that you're in tune, on time, in time. The higher power is often looked at, some people call it the God consciousness, the universal consciousness. Whatever it is, it's this omnipresent, omnipowerful force, vibration that exists. So let's look at the harmonic relationships. Harmonic relationship of the first order is, we call it self with source. And that is recognizing who you really are, that there's something much bigger than your physical being, that there's a reason for your being on this planet. There's a reason for your being here on earth. And that reason is revealed through your purpose. That idea of self with source is to say, I come from something great. I come from something powerful. Once you acknowledge that, and when we look at all of the theologies of all the different religions, there's that primary acknowledgement that we come from something, that there is a source, that there's a reason for us being here. So first harmonic relationship, self with source, to recognize that we're part of something bigger. Second harmonic relationship is self with self. The interesting thing about this vibration is that so much of who we are and how we feel about ourselves was the result of other people teaching us, of our parents, of our neighbors, of our environment. So there are many times that the situation into which we were born may not have been a positive one, may not have been a productive one. So maybe we weren't born into a sea of love and care and concern. Maybe we were born into a family of criticism, of fear. And so this idea of self with self is critical, because there's so many things that were put in our psyche, in our being, by other people, by external forces, that it is important that we take the time to see who we really are, to be clear about ourselves. So once we recognize whose we are, then that second step, who we are, self with self. The third harmonic relationship is self with others. And one of the things we notice is that each one builds on itself. If you don't have a relationship between your source, it's challenging to figure out who you are and how you fit in to the symphony of life. If you're not clear about who you are, then having relationships is challenging. You always bring yourself to the party. And so if you're not clear about who you are and what you're about, then any relationship you get into can be problematic. And so often we look at relationships right now where we have two people who are not clear about who they are themselves, trying to come together and then build something. It's like the Tower of Babel, in ancient times. It said that all the people who were building the tower, that the creator gave them different languages so they couldn't communicate. And therefore they couldn't build, they couldn't work together. And so we're not clear about ourselves, and when we get into relationships self with others, it's like the Tower of Babel. We're talking different languages. One person may be talking love and feeling, another person talking control and dominance. So self with others. The fourth relationship, harmonic relationship, is self with energy. To recognize that the universe is all about energy. Then the universe, there are basically three fundamental principles. There's energy, which is vibration. The moment you have existence, you have energy. There is order, the way stuff works, the system. In our book, the whole purpose of the 12 universal laws of success was to make you aware that there are universal laws, just like the laws of gravity. They're universal laws that if you apply them, you can get specific and desired results. When we recognize that the universe is based on energy, we can go back to the Einstein formula, E = mc². Energy, which is vibration, equals m, which is manifestation, times the speed of light squared. Now that's a statement, but the principle is that there is a energy equivalent to any manifestation. So anything that we want really stems from the energy, the vibration that we create inside ourselves. That we don't really pursue things, we attract things. This is a powerful piece, folks, because this means that everything is always an inside job. So self with energy, to recognize that we live in this field, this energy field, and that anything we desire, there's an energy equivalent within us. And if we can strive for that energy equivalent, we can create that manifestation. The fifth harmonic relationship is self with objectives. Objectives are the goals that we wish to experience. Self with objectives. In the Habakkuk, it says, write the vision, make it plain upon tablets. And so as we go through life, in order to fit into that symphony, we must have goals, we must have objectives, things that we're going to be, do, and have. And so that our life is always in furtherance of those objectives. If we have no goals, no objectives, we are still in the symphony. We're still on the river of time. It's just that we have abdicated one of our great powers, the power to choose. And we have let our lives unfold based on other people's choices, based on the world mind, based on somebody else who's in our lives. So self with objective says that to obtain anything, first we must have goals. And to obtain these goals, we must write them down. We must get into the feeling nature of it, the vibration, the energy. The sixth harmonic relationship is self with results. You see, when we start this manifestation process, when we live our lives where we start creating our life based on our thoughts, our emotions, our habits, and our relationships, then what about the life that we create? Sometimes we create lives where the results rule us. There are people who seek money and possessions and material things. And there comes a time where many times the material things begin to master them. Sometimes we can get results in our lives, and those results now become the controlling factor. Our ego working with results can take us astray. We can get so into the love of money, the love of possessions, where we define ourselves in terms of the results that we have obtained. So then if we don't wear designer clothes, we don't feel happy. We don't think anybody loves us. If we don't have a certain amount of money, we don't think people will accept us. There's a great saying is that seek what you love and love what you get. You know, there are many rich people who are unhappy, miserable. There are many poor people who are unhappy and miserable too. But there are poor people who, and I don't like to use poor, there are people who may not have the material possessions, but have something far more valuable, a feeling of joy, a feeling of love. The seventh harmonic relationship is self with purpose. To recognize that we were created for a purpose, to do certain things, to fulfill certain things on the planet. And when we look at the harmonic relationships, it's really a circle. That first harmonic relationship, to recognize that we are related to a source, that we are a created entity in a universal consciousness. And the seventh harmonic relationship, once again, is saying that we identify with the very source that created us, so we're living our purpose. And so that is why so many people spend their lives really, and we should all spend our lives pursuing our purpose so that we can complete the cycle. So that now we are planted as a seed, for example, to become a rose. Well, as the cycles go through, we become the beautiful rose, which fulfills the purpose for the seed. So when we look at these harmonic relationships, we have to ask ourselves then, how do we use these harmonic relationships? What are the powers that we have to use these harmonic relationships to create the lives we desire? I like to think of two concepts. There's a difference between knowledge and understanding. You know, as we pursue on this success journey, many times we get a sense of knowledge. We want to learn more stuff, and knowledge is more of an abstraction. Understanding is your interpretation of the knowledge. Understanding leads to action. Knowledge may lead to enlightenment, but understanding leads to action. So think about David and Goliath for a moment. Knowledge is like the fact that there are stones. Stones are symbolic of knowledge. Understanding is the consciousness that David had, that if I take this knowledge, if I take these stones, and I have my skill set up so that I know how to use a slingshot, that I can overcome obstacles. And so in our lives, look around at the knowledge that we have, the skills that we have to address the challenges that confront us. So what are these higher powers now that we can access through these harmonic relationships? First higher power is the power of intuition. You know, we have the GPS, or the global positioning system. I like to think of the IGS, which is the internal guidance system. And so your intuition is really a feeling nature that's connected with the God mind, connected with the universal consciousness. We often think about it as that small voice inside us that tells us no when our ego says yes. That small voice inside us that tells us that this is not a person that I should be in a relationship with. You know, many times we get into relationships with people that are not good for us. And your intuition told you that. Your intuition speaks through your feelings. Your intuition is often contested by your ego. Your feelings may say, I don't want to be alone. I need somebody in my life. Okay. And your ego says, go for it. But your intuition says, you know what? That's not the right person. So in order to really use these higher powers, we learn to trust our intuition. The second higher power is the power of discernment. And this is based on our intuition. When we have a feeling about something, discernment is the ability to understand what it is about that which we have a feeling. So we may have a negative feeling about a person. Person comes into our lives all shiny and sparkly and new and talking the right stuff and looking the right way and doing the right things. But inside there's a feeling saying, no, no, slow down. Well, discernment is the ability now to understand that feeling. There's a scripture that says, be not deceived by appearances, but be you clarified by truth. So the power of discernment is to help you see the truth of any situation based on your intuition. The third power is the power of right judgment. Okay. And this is really decision, your power of choice. So you have a feeling about something through your intuition. Your discernment says this is what it is. There's so many scriptural principles. Know the tree by its fruit. So discernment is saying, look at the fruit. Now I know where this fruit comes from. It's an evil fruit. It comes from an evil tree. Let me run. Right judgment now embodies choice. When you make a judgment, you make a decision on how you relate to something, a decision on, you might say, your interpretation of that situation. Judgment is the foundation of choice. And so the power of right judgment is to say, always choose positive. Scripture says, judge not that you be not judged. What it's really saying is that what it further says that what judgment you send out comes back to you. And this is really a statement of the law of karma, that whatever your actions are, the vibration of the actions that you send out come back to you. Whew. This is a powerful thought, folks. Because this is now saying, when it says that whatever you send out, so always send out positivity. Always send out good. You see, always be a planter of flowers rather than a cultivator of weeds. Because right judgment says whatever you send out through your choices and actions comes back to you. The fourth higher power is the power of perfection. So as you make your right judgments, as you make decisions and choices in your life, the power of the principle of perfection says that always do your best. Scripture says, whatsoever your hand findeth to do, do it with all your might. So the power of perfection says, always be your best, always do the best that you can with what you have to do it with, to work at it. See, the power of perfection means that you have to do something. Once you make a judgment, then you have to do it to the best of your ability. It troubles me sometimes when I see young people who want results without the work. You know, we think back on when I think it was Roger Bannister, when Bannister ran the 4-minute mile. He didn't just wake up one day and say, wow, it's Saturday morning. I think I'm going to go out and run a mile in 4 minutes. The principle, the power of perfection says that once you have a goal, once you have used your intuition to feel a certain thing, your discernment to understand what it is, your right judgment to make a decision to go for it, then the principle, the power of perfection says, do it to the best of your ability. So he didn't just wake up and go run a mile in 4 minutes. He spent years, he spent at least a year practicing and preparing for it. And so this says in our lives that if we want the results that we desire, that we have to always do our best. We have to always be committed to go one more round, to throw one more blow, to get up one more time, make one more call. The fifth higher power is the power of forgiveness. See, now this is a very subtle power, because the power of forgiveness basically says that if you cannot release the negative feelings, the negative thoughts, the negative habits, the negative relationships, if you cannot release them, they will hold you captive. See, when you're unforgiving, it's not just the other person say, I can never forgive them. I'll always remember the pain they caused. Well, guess what? As long as you remember the pain they caused, you perpetuate the very pain that they caused. Forgiveness is like an anchor. Can you imagine one of these huge ocean liners? I was looking, Sandra and I were talking about some ocean liner, the biggest ocean liner in the world, 15 decks, and I think it carries, I don't know, 5,000 people. It has an engine and it can cruise. But if you drop anchor, if that boat drops anchor, then no matter what happens, the engine can run, the people are partying, it's not going anywhere. So in your lives, in our lives, I challenge each and every one of us, what have you dropped anchor on? If you dropped anchor on past hurts so that they control your life, if you dropped anchor on past failures so that you're living life looking in the rearview mirror, then out the windshield. This idea of forgiveness is critical because you cannot fly until you have forgiven all the things that hold you down. Whether someone did it to you, or whether you did it to them. The sixth higher power is the power of prayer. See, prayer is really about alignment. When you look back on the Lord's Prayer, if you go through it, and all of the prayers are basically do one thing. Most prayers are prayers of alignment. You know, when we look at the Our Father who art in heaven, acknowledging the higher consciousness, hallowed be thy name, rejoicing on the higher consciousness, we're acknowledging that power. As we go on, it's really about, let me align myself with the higher power. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespassed against us. And so the power of prayer is like priming the pump. Prayer is the mechanism by which you prime the pump. And the pump is that universal pump that gives you access to all power, that gives you access to all knowledge. And so when you pray, you're praying to prime the pump, to align yourself with the source that created you. And then finally, the seventh higher power is the power of expectation. When you pray with the expectation of results. There's an Arabian proverb, and it says that he who has health has hope. He who has hope has everything. So when we look at the idea of hope is like an expectation of change. Hope is that thing that gives you a direction when there's nothing else to give you direction. You know, when you look at faith, faith is the substance of things hoped for. And so there's this relationship. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So this idea of the power of expectation is to expect results, even though there's no physical manifestation of it. And this is that bridge that takes you from the vibration, the energy of that which you're seeking, to the manifestation of that which you're seeking. Ooh, let's just take a deep breath for a moment, because we've covered a lot today. Let me just briefly review what we've done, because those of you listening today, and I hope you'll listen to this message again and again, because this idea of higher power is saying that you have greater power than is apparent in your space, that there's a connection between you and infinite reality, infinite consciousness. So we talked about the 7 harmonic relationships: self with source, your relationship with your creator; self with self, your relationship with yourself; self with others, your ability to communicate and use the mastermind principle to work for you; Self with energy, to recognize that every manifestation has a corresponding energy equivalent. And you focus on the energy, the manifestation will take place. Self with objectives is that we are goal-setting creatures, and we seek the things that align ourselves with our purpose. Self with results, that the bridge between goals and results is desire and action. And then finally, self with purpose, recognizing that we are living the purpose for which we were created, creating the circle of life. That we use these principles in a sea of understanding, where it's just not enough to know something, but we must take the knowledge and put the knowledge into action. And then finally, the 7 higher powers that can be used to align us, to put us in line, and to move us up. The power of intuition, to trust our feelings. The power of discernment, to see the truth of our feelings. The power of right judgment, to take action, to make choices and action based on alignment with who we really are. The power of perfection, to always do our best in everything we do. The power of forgiveness, to release past failures, release negative emotions, to get rid of anything that's not congruent with where you want to go. Don't worry about where you have been. The power of prayer, the idea of seeking. Seeking you shall find, asking it shall be answered, knocking it shall be open. And then finally, the power of expectation, to know that you know that you know. When you can use these harmonic relationships and tap into these higher powers, nothing is impossible. You can truly be what you want to be. You can truly have whatever you want to have. You can truly become the person that you were created to be. Always knowing that the best is yet to come. So it is. Let's just take a moment. Thank you so much for being with us today. Once again, don't forget to get a copy of our book. If you don't have the 12 Universal Laws of Success, this is your recipe book for success, your guidebook. To get a copy of our home study course, The New You for the New Year, which is an implementation tool to help you take the principles from the 12 Universal Laws of Success and put them into action, because action brings results. Thank you so much for being with us this Saturday. We'll see you next Saturday, 8 a.m. We know that you can be what you want to be, do what you want to do, and have whatever you want to have, always knowing that the best is yet to come. So it is.